Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely brilliant piece of 14th century poetry by the legendary Sufi mystic Amir Khusro. And this isn't just your standard poem, it is literally a step-by-step psychological roadmap into absolute spiritual surrender. It tackles something that's just as relevant to us today as it was way back in the 1300s, the complete loss of our worldly identity. We're going to see exactly how this historical voice maps out what modern psychology calls ego death, and it's absolutely fascinating. Okay, let's look at this opening line. You have taken away all my identity by just a glance. I mean, that hooks you right away, doesn't it? It instantly makes you wonder, what kind of glance actually has the power to just strip away everything we think we are? It drops us right into the central mystery here, completely challenging how we normally think about human connection. So to really demystify this, we're going to break the poem down into 5 distinct stages. First, the power of a glance. Second, the intoxication of love. Third, absolute spiritual surrender. Fourth, experiencing ego death. And finally, the ultimate eternal union. Let's kick things off with stage 1, the power of a glance, and how we start losing the ego. There's a really fascinating contrast happening right out of the gate here. The original text uses the phrase chap tilak, which literally translates to physical forehead marks or religious symbols that denote a person's status or community. But spiritually, the poem uses these physical marks to brilliantly illustrate the heavy psychological burden of our ego. It represents our worldly identity. The labels, the achievements, the status we constantly cling to. The text is basically saying that the second a profound spiritual connection happens, all of those external labels just get instantly wiped away. And the crazy part is, this massive loss of identity doesn't require some huge dramatic event. It cascades in really simple steps. First, just a single glance is exchanged, pure eye contact. Second, that worldly ego instantly begins to dissolve. And third, a total identity transformation begins. Literally, all of this is triggered by just locking eyes with a spiritual guide. Moving right along to stage 2, the intoxication of love, or the furnace of love. The tone suddenly takes a massive shift here. Listen to this. Making me drink from the furnace of love, you have completely intoxicated me. So after losing the ego, the subject isn't just left empty. Instead, they gain something insanely potent. They're drinking in a devotion that completely overrides all their normal rational senses. The specific term used is prem bhati, meaning the furnace of love. And I love this because devotion isn't presented as some soft, gentle Hallmark card feeling. No, it's this raw, boiling energy. Imagine an actual industrial furnace melting down raw materials. That's the kind of intense heat we're talking about. It cooks away remaining worldly attachments, leaving the seeker completely drunk on spiritual love. Which brings us naturally to stage 3. Absolute spiritual surrender and total submission. So we hit this line, fair wrists with green glass bangles, you have held my arm tightly. In its original language, there's this beautiful rhythmic repetition that creates a really delicate image, but it's actually hiding a much heavier philosophical truth about vulnerability and giving up control. This brilliantly illustrates the duality of the poem. On one hand, you have the extreme physical fragility of glass bangles, stuff that shatters under the slightest pressure. But put that right next to the spiritual reality, the unstoppable, rock-solid force of total submission. It's a gorgeous paradox. By letting their delicate wrists be grasped so firmly, the seeker is showing complete vulnerability, without a single ounce of resistance. They are totally handing over the reins. Now we reach stage 4, experiencing ego death, which is essentially a complete psychological overwrite. Here, the text describes a totally willing, joyous sacrifice. I sacrifice myself entirely to you, O dyer, for you have dyed me in your exact own color. The seeker isn't being forced. They are happily letting their old self be completely painted over. The metaphor of the dyer, or the rangres, is absolutely crucial here. Back in the 14th century, a dyer would boil the old color right out of a cloth and steep it in vibrant new dye. This is literally what modern psychology calls ego death, a willing erasing of the self. The guide hasn't just tweaked how the seeker thinks, they've fundamentally altered their inner fabric so that absolutely no trace of the old identity remains. And that leads us to our final destination, stage 5, the ultimate eternal union. In these final lines, Amir Khusro steps out from behind the metaphors. He writes, Khusro sacrifices himself to Nizam. You have made me a bride of eternal union. By actually naming himself and his guru, Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, he permanently immortalizes this deeply personal bond, bringing this whole theoretical journey crashing right into historical reality. He uses the word suhagin, which literally means a fortunate married woman. It's fascinating how the earthly concept of marriage is used here to explain the ultimate spiritual achievement. The seeker takes on the role of the bride, and becoming a suhagin spiritually means achieving an unbreakable, supreme connection with the divine. So the journey that started with losing a superficial identity culminates in gaining an eternal one. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought drawn straight from this timeless text. We spend our entire lives building up our egos and our identities, right? But what if our ultimate liberation, our truest freedom, actually comes from letting go of who we think we are? It's a massive perspective shift and definitely something to chew on long after this explainer ends. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today.